and for Inktober, I have been drawing different houses. So for today, we are drawing the Storybook Cottage. It was a close one. Um, the house was a very, very close second. So I will be drawing the Hobbit house, but not today. Today we'll be drawing the Storybook Cottage. And I thought I might take a minute. Actually, I'm going to turn some music on. So we have something in the background besides my dog who's begging and burrowing. Oh, you were hoping for the Hobbit house. Well, maybe I'll do another live of the Hobbit house tomorrow for the last day of Inktober. I did sketches for both because I wasn't sure which one would be picked, but this one won by a very, very slim margin. And then the townhouse, this one, I also sketched out, so that one is ready to go as well. So all right, if I don't sketch this one live, Javier, I will make some type of a video of it, and I'll have that on my TikTok and Instagram just so you can see a little bit of the drawing process. But I thought it might be a good idea before we get started, while we're waiting for maybe a few other people to join. Oh, Javier, nice. Yeah, all three were great choices. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we'll see. Tomorrow's the last day of Inktober, so I may be really motivated and do it live. But if not, I will record it in some fashion. And oh, I was going to show you a little bit, since I don't do the drawings on the lives, since I already have the sketch for you. I thought I'd show you a few of my tools that I use for drawing these, and a little bit about the process for it, if you're interested. So basically, I'm going to show you a little trick, and I didn't do this for most of these, but I did do it. I had to do these 3 sketches last night pretty quickly. You can see the other 2 right here. And I did something called sight size drawing, and I don't know if that's something that you're familiar with, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of a preview, and if you're interested in learning more about it, I'm happy to make a video about it, either in short content on Instagram or TikTok, or long here, longer format here, or both. But let me show you. Basically, sight size drawing is where you have something that's the same size as your sorry, I've got the music on and it's distracting me a little bit. But the object that you're drawing is the same size as your reference. So in a photograph, that might be the photograph is the same size. If you're drawing from life, it means that you put your easel at such a distance that that when you're looking at the person or object or scene that you're drawing, it's the same size as your canvas. I don't think I'm explaining it that well right now. I haven't had my coffee yet, so I have it right here, but I haven't had a sip. But anyway, what you would do if you were doing sight size drawing with a photograph is you would want your photograph to be the same size as your drawing. So because I was very tired last night and I wanted to get these 3 sketches out, I used sight size, which sometimes I do. Often I usually don't, to be honest, but it's a quick way of drawing. So I learned very quickly that on my iPad, which is what I use for drawing, because it's a nice size and the brightness is good, that's too big for a postcard. So hold on a minute, I'm going to turn my volume down just a little bit so that I can hear myself. All right, so I learned that if I go into the edit program, it's very nearly the same size as the postcard. You see, it's a little bit wider, and it's a little bit shorter. And so what I did for these was I subtracted, I think it was about like a half a centimeter, and I just drew a line. So this was going to be my top line of the drawing, and then my side line was going to be this area. Now I have to be careful here. I can't take it out of edit. I suppose I could take a screenshot of this and then the photo would be the correct size, but I was a bit lazy. So what I did was I drew a line, so that made it the same height. And it's still not the same width, but I kind of cropped these in such a way that it wouldn't matter too much if it's a little bit off. So this is becoming a little bit complicated. So what I would do then is I would measure significant points of the composition, and I would use two reference points. So I would use this top bit and this left bit, and then I would use my academic divider, which is this tool, and this tool you can spread. If you don't have one of these, don't worry, because you can do the same thing with just a little sheet of paper, and you can make the marks. You can make marks as you go on the sheet of paper. You don't need to spend a lot of money on that, but this is really handy for it. So basically, to make drawing really quick, this is one way to do it. So I would look for the main points of the composition. So in this case, the main point, you know, the most obvious point is this peak of the house. So I would take my academic divider and I would measure starting at that point and measuring to the top of my page. And so it looks about like that. And remember, I had a line drawn along the top similar to the one here. So move my candle out of the way so I don't injure myself. So you can see right there, that's about where the line was. So I would know that lengthwise, the peak of the roof was going to start here. But if I wanted to know where it needed to be from the left-hand side of the composition, I can take another measurement using this length side. So I would take that measurement here, and I could see that the point of the storybook cottage was going to be here. So the point of this peak was here. So you don't do that for everything, but this is a really, it's a really quick and easy way. If you were to study at an atelier or someplace that teaches, you know, very strict classical drawing, they would teach you with this method. The masters learned often with this method. And what it does is it's a great way to train your eye to start looking for key points that are important in a composition. So to make this drawing very quickly, I might find where's that point, where's this point, and where's this point. And then I don't need to worry so much about angles or perspective drawing because I can just connect the points and it's going to be accurate. So that's just a very quick explanation for that. Hi, Christopher. Hi, Chris. How are you doing? Hi, Paul. Nice to see you. The week's a lot more in focus. That's great. So anyway, getting back to site size. So that is a very quick way. It's a traditional way. The masters drew that way. And I can just very quickly knock off several drawings by doing that. Now, it's not a replacement for learning to draw without those tools, but it is a great way to check your work. And it's a great way to train your eye. So because I wanted to do these three sketches very quickly, I used the site size method for that. So I just shrunk my little picture down in the editing program, drew a little line that made it the same size as the postcard. It was a little bit wider, but it didn't matter because I just used that top line and the line on the side for measuring the key points and using the academic divider to do that. If you don't have an academic divider, don't fret. You don't need to spend a lot of money. You can just use a sheet of paper or an index card. When I taught art to my students at university, I would give them an index card on the first day of class, and they would use that for any kind of key measuring that they needed to do. So in that sense, if I was using the card, I would just line the edge of the paper up here, and I would make a little tick here with a pencil, and then I can, you know, line that up here that way. I don't know if that made sense, but if anybody's interested, I'm happy to make a longer video explaining how to do site size. It is a traditional method of drawing, and it makes drawing quickly a lot easier, and it makes it easier to make sure that your work is accurate. Chris, you're well. This is your free lesson and you're finishing your other work. Oh wow, you're teaching on a Sunday. That's harsh. Well, it's nice of you to stop by. So anyway, the Storybook Cottage did win out, and I have already done the sketch using that side size method that I just described. And I always use a shish kebab skewer or a knitting needle, and that is also handy for checking angles. Even sometimes with the side size method, it's nice to have a backup, so I can, line up the angle of that roof there, and then see that that's accurate with my drawing. And I didn't go completely side size on this one, I have to say. I wanted it to be a little bit longer and a little bit more characterful. And the way that I draw in the lines are also going to be a little bit looser on this because I want it to look a bit, more magical and mystical. So before we get started on this, because it's the last day of October, it's the second to last day. It's the last day of my official live, although we've established I may be brave and do another one tomorrow of the Hobbit house that was so popular. Where is it? There it is. And that would give people an opportunity to see that as well. But I thought it would be kind of fun to just give you a little tour of the drawings that I've done so far for Inktober. And starting from the first of the month, so let's just very quickly. One nice thing about doing a drawing every day is it's fun to go and be able to see everything that you've done and put it all up in a row. It makes you feel really accomplished. And it also really improves things for you. You will get better by drawing every day. You'll improve more by drawing daily than anything else, than any lessons, and not that those things aren't important as well, but this is the key. Do a drawing every day. And it was it wasn't as much work as I thought it would be, but there certainly were days where I didn't feel like I wanted to, but on those days I would, this is a failure, and this one's going to be replaced. So I already have a drawing. I didn't like that one. I'm not even gonna draw it, and that happens. It was a very simple composition, and it just looked like a 6-year-old did it. No, and I couldn't really do anything to fix it. So failures happen no matter how many years you've been drawing, no matter how accomplished you are. And I'm actually going to be making a shorter form video about that because I've recently just illustrated the cover for a CD, and boy, it was a rough one. I had a lot of trouble, just creative blocks, things not going the way that I wanted, and I think I had about definitely 2 failed attempts before I finally succeeded yesterday. So, you learn from your mistakes. Don't ever feel, that when you see somebody drawing online that they just sat down and things came out that way. They worked really hard to get there, and you'll continue to have mistakes, and you'll grow the most through your mistakes. So anyhow, I'm going to be taking these to my printer on Tuesday when he opens and getting copies of all of my Inktober drawings made. Now, these ones here, these next ones, I'm going to add a little bit more value to these. So these last ones are very light in comparison to the ones that you've seen before. So there are a little bit more details on these that I want to add that I haven't added yet. So you're seeing, the before, like the almost end stage, but not quite on these last ones. And I will film that as well. And so I'm taking these to my printer. I'm having him print all of these on watercolor paper, and then I will be selling those in my shop for people to just either have it as a print or as a coloring sheet. And I'm thinking that might be kind of a fun way to make watercolor or gouache painting a little more accessible for people who just maybe aren't here yet or don't have the patience to ever be here at this stage. Some people just really want to get in with painting and they're not interested in drawing. And although I encourage you to learn to draw, art should be, it should be enjoyable, and You don't want to bring yourself excruciating pain. So, Martina, welcome. You have a class on Sundays too, but it was earlier today. Oh, I'm glad you got a notification too, and I'm glad that you're here. You have your candles and your material, terrific. I've got my candle. I almost burned myself when I was showing how to do site size, but okay, so let's get started now. Like I said, I did, as you can see, I did the main drawing last night, and I'm going to go in with my Prismacolor, my 005, and I'm very excited because Pentel, who makes the aqua brushes that I use, they make these aqua brushes. They also make the, where is it? They also make the mechanical pencils that I like to use, these graphic gear. And apparently, I didn't know this, but they make fine liners that look an awful lot like these Prismacolors. And they're sending me a few to try out, so I'm really excited to see if they compare to the Prismacolor. I do love the Prismacolor so much. They're my favorite, but they're very tricky to find. They're very expensive to buy in Europe because they come from North America, and yeah, so it's going to be nice to have an alternative. They used to sell these at the Michaels stores in America, and I've been having trouble finding them. You can get a big kit of them, of like 5 of the pens, but you can't necessarily get just one at a time. They used to be able to sell these solo. So yeah, I'm excited to see if the Pentel compare. Hi, Mortal Maple. And Chris says, your wonderful clean setup is so much more pleasant than my awful letter. Not always, Chris. It's it got pretty messy here during Inktober, and then doing doing everything else that I've been doing with illustrating the cover of the CD that I've just finished. And I'll be giving a sneak peek of that on my Instagram and TikTok, and maybe on here as well. But look out for that. So yeah, we can get started now. Let's put the candle in the shot a little bit, make it a little bit more aesthetic for you, and bring it a little bit closer to me. I have a window facing in this direction, which is giving me loads of beautiful natural light as well as a pretty view. All right, so I've done my sketch, and now I like to just go in with the fine liner, put in the key points. I always use a sheet of paper so that I don't smudge the graphite underneath. It's very easy. So let's get started with that. I almost always do my lines freehand because I like my style to look a bit just more organic. So if you're drawing at home, you can get this photograph on my website. You can just access it there, or you can download it to draw later, or you can just go ahead and draw along right now as I'm doing the inking. I don't know. I know, Paul, you had the photo earlier for sure. I don't know if you had the chance to draw in advance or not. Maybe you could let us know in the comments. Chris, that's a relief to know I feel like an utter wreck. No, if I could pen, if I didn't have such a complicated setup here with the live, I would show you my studio. It's an absolute mess right now. It's really not a good situation. So it happens. It just means you're creating. And some people really flourish in a lot of chaos in their studio. I'm not one of them. I tend to try to at least do a basic tidy after every session of drawing or painting, but sometimes those tidies are not sometimes those tidies aren't very good. All right, so there's a lot of scalloping on the side here, and seems to go up and down, like down to the left, down to the left, down to the left. I mean, my inclination, like my instinct, I'll show you, is to want to just draw it like that, right? And just be kind of lazy with it. But I'm thinking I may sort of mimic what they have and just do like that, right? So I'm going to freehand it. That's how I usually do these details. And there's a double thing here, so like there's two planks of wood. One is just flat, and then the other one is scalloped. If I zoom in, you can probably see that better. And so I think I'm just going to draw a line in between. Let's be brave. And again, I like things to look a little bit loose for that. Okay. Mortal Maple says, I'm sketching a girl standing around leaves, quite random. That's all right. You're sketching a girl standing around leaves. You're sketching a girl standing around leaves, or you're, maybe you can clarify that, quite random. No, it's whatever you're drawing. It's nice sometimes just to be drawing when somebody else is drawing, even if you're drawing your own separate thing. Chris says, you seem to enjoy chaos too much whenever you're creative. Tidying has been a forced discipline as of late. Yeah, it is. It is. That's exactly what it is, Chris. It's a discipline. And, you know, it becomes a habit just like anything else the more you do it. All right. I think that one's all right. Not too bad. I like, again, I like, if you know anything, if this isn't your first live stream or your first experience with me, I like a little bit of randomness and imperfection in my drawings. I think that's what distinguishes them from a photograph as well. Yes, Chris, it is a difficult habit. The last thing usually that I feel like doing after painting especially is cleaning all my brushes, but I know that if I don't, they won't stay as nice as they are. And also, yeah, I lost my train of thought because I was thinking with the other side of the brain here of how to tackle this, because this is something people sometimes have a problem with, is that left-handed, right-handed thing. And so there's two ways that I could tackle it. One would be to turn my drawing upside down and do this one that way with my dominant hand. If you're left-handed, this side will be easier for you. But I think I'm just going to do a little practice. Nah, it'll be all right. So I'm going to freehand this one as well. And when I'm doing these really intricate things, I don't talk because I'll mess up. My brain can't be working on both halves at the same time. All right, not too bad. And I'll go in later and put in, shading and everything. But for now, if this is your first live stream with me, I like to represent everything that I've put in the sketch, because if I put it in the sketch, it's important. I probably spent some time measuring it out. Again, the site size method that I showed you, I don't usually do that. What I do usually do is I'll use the unit of measurement, which I've made videos about. And again, if anybody wants longer content about any of this, I'm looking for things that people might be interested in to make longer content for. So for instance, I might say, all right, the whole of this building is this length, and then I might compare it this way, and I can see it's shorter. The width is shorter except for this tower. So this tower, the height of this tower on the edge is the same length as the distance across. And so I like to use a tool like this to do that, or again, a shish kebab skewer or a knitting needle to do those things. And so some of that's a bit easier with like a shish kebab skewer. I can just go like this. This end, this is going to be on whatever end I want it to be, and then I'll move my thumbnail to be where the distance is. I have to be careful to not touch my screen because I'll lose the picture. But you can see that same thing there, right? So that's usually what I'll do. And then whatever I've deemed to be important enough to want to sketch in before I go in with the ink, then I go in later and I want to just represent those main things in ink before I go any further. And again, this window has that same type of a scallop, and it also has its two pieces. And if anybody has any questions, ask them in the comments, and I am periodically looking over there. All right, so it starts this way. All right, that was the scariest part probably of the whole drawing for me, was doing the scallops and getting them to look sort of okay. Second scariest part is going to be the oval windows. And I did not use a stencil. I do have many stencils with different shapes, different circles. I didn't use them for these windows. And I also didn't use them for the Hobbit house, amazingly. The way I approached it with the Hobbit house, not to switch drawings on you midstream, but since 50% of people wanted me to draw this one, I looked again for main points. So on this one, I looked to see where that main point was, where this main point was, and then the inside of the circle I did from there to there, right? And then I kind of freehanded it. And then to do the circle that surrounds it, I just figured out what that distance was, right? And then checked to see that it was the same distance in the other areas. It goes down to the ground here, so it doesn't. And here you can't see it because it's covered with foliage, but I knew that it was, I could see kind of that it was going to be consistently around there. So then I would just, it's going to be shorter on the drawing, but I would take that measurement and then again, freehand it. So put in a few points and then connect the dots. And that's, these are organic drawings, you know, or buildings. They're hand built. They are not necessarily going to be perfectly linear. And in fact, these windows are not circular at all. They're ovals. So I just looked for main points and just sort of sketched them in. And so we've already put that in. SL, yeah, we have a big party today. It's great. Martina, you just downloaded the image. So whimsy. You will go directly with the ink pens. Of course you will, Martina, because you're amazing and bold. I'm more timid and shy and wanting things to be a little more, you know, controlled. But I love when people just go straight in with the ink. I can do that. I don't normally do that. Let's be honest. Okay. All right. So this is not, because there are shingles, I'm trying to draw this a little bit more wavy, just to kind of give an indication of that. And so this is our last Inktober drawing, but next Sunday, my plan is to take these drawings from Inktober, either the exact same ones that I did on the live stream, or if somebody likes some of the other ones, or if I think one is interesting. Remember, I'm getting postcards made for all of them. So my postcards are going to be made on a nice watercolor paper that's cotton and will handle watercolor and even gouache medium quite well. And so I'm not going to paint on my originals. I could, but I just think they're beautiful as ink drawings, and I want to preserve them as that way. But I do know that the ink drawings that I do, or the postcards, will be exactly like this. So I can be free to paint it as many times as I want. I can get bold. I can do different color schemes. So I'm really excited about using the postcards. Um, I can get, 4 of these on one A4 sheet if you're in the EU or UK, and use that paper size. So that is nice. I can just really play and be fearless and not have to worry so much about the fact that I spent, over an hour doing each drawing. Sometimes with painting, that fear really creeps in. And so that's another nice thing about the postcards. I think I told you before. Um, I've got a few comments. Martina, you feel like you can learn so much from me. I'm so methodical, you need this. Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Yeah. But you know what? I think everybody has different styles. People learn differently from different people. Some people really just have a mental block for people who are methodical, especially if you're younger. I really learned this when I taught at my daughter's school. When we first moved to England, I had the opportunity to teach her English, not just her, but her classmates, English literature, English language, and also art. So I took some of the students there through their GCSEs in art. And I learned, and I knew this from my years studying educational psychology, but younger people don't do as well with a lot of method, right? So a little bit of method is good, but more freedom. Their their brains aren't developed enough yet to really fully embrace that for most students. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions to any rule, but it's usually between 16 and 18 is when people really develop the ability to have more focus on things like doing site size or using a more complicated method with drawing. So, and some people never develop it. Some people just don't like it. Some people like art to be fun and splash paint around. And there's no right or wrong. There's just personal preference, really. I find that for me, I like to practice being looser because I tend to be more controlled. And I think whichever way you are, it's really helpful if you want to grow as an artist to try on the other cap every once in a while. So if you're very methodical, do some timed drawings, do some timed paintings, you'll learn more that way. If you're very quick and splashy, do the opposite. Take some time and do some drawings that are a bit more thought out. And it stretches your brain in a really satisfying way to do that. My candle burned out. I think I'm going to get another one. Martina, yes, you've noticed this about young students as well. It's also a time we are in everything. It's also the time we are in everything isn't immediate and quick. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's true. I mean, but there is cognitive ability too. So, but yeah, my attention span gets shorter if I watch more short content things. Or if I multitask, if I'm drawing or playing like a little video or like a computer, like whatever you call them, a game on an app on my phone while I'm watching TV, then suddenly it feels like kind of weird to watch TV without multitasking. So yeah, it's focus. All right, so I kind of made a little bit of I have to think for a second. When you make a mistake, make your mistakes work for you. That is an important thing to learn. So I've drawn this window and the frame around it, but because I've been chatting and not necessarily focusing, and my sketch is letting me down a little bit here. There's a line that goes across here. I can see there's a double letting in here, and I've only put in the single. I think what I'm going to do is hold off on all the double lettings until I'm done. You see the double lines, the double black lines? Like there's one on the outside, but then there's one on the inside. And I think because I'm drawing so small, it might just look like one thick line. I can't, my nib is not small enough to get in there. So, and again, that's the nice thing about drawing too, is you are in control. You make the decisions. If you like something and want to put it in, great. If you don't want it there, just don't put it in. All right, so I emphasized this curve because I wanted it to look a bit more whimsical. This is a bit, actually, you can see on the drawing, this curve right here is a bit straighter. It's got a gentle curve, but I've made mine, you can see I've made mine more of a jaunty curve just because I mean, I've called it Storybook Cottage, so I want to sort of go with that. And this too. I just, yeah. My hope is if I draw enough of these from references that I can start inventing houses a bit more, you know, adding and subtracting different features. That type of drawing from memory, it's not really drawing from memory, but drawing with creativity becomes a lot easier the more you draw from life. Sorry, I tend to, because there's a lot of space. SL asks what the skewer is for. I use the skewer for doing different things. So I use it for creating a unit of measurement. I have some videos. Actually, most of my videos are on TikTok at the moment, although for the month of October, I've taken all of my drawing videos that I've made so far in shorter or semi-short form, you know, under 5 minutes. And I have posted those on YouTube, and so there is a playlist that will explain how to use the skewer. There are at least, I think, 2 videos that discuss it, but you can use a skewer or a knitting needle. I find if I'm working with an electronic device, the knitting needle, if it touches, well, it's not going to do it now. It's going to make a liar out of me, but sometimes it'll react with the screen and I'll lose the picture, whereas wood it's easier. These are cheap. You can buy a whole packet of these for £1 or $1, you know, at the store. They're just a shish kebab skewer. I usually cut off one point just so that I have a blunt edge as well. But I like these both because they're very thin. You can do unit of measurement with a pen or a pencil or with a paintbrush, but those devices are thicker, they're often beveled, and so this makes it a little bit easier. So I will take a unit of measurement and I can use that unit to compare the sizes of everything else. So for instance, if I wanted to see like the size of this window, I might line it up along the edge and then take my thumbnail to where the other edge is. So that is the length of this window. And maybe I can turn it this way then and see that the length is the same distance as the height, right? Or maybe I can also take that same length and I can see, all right, there's the length of the window, and it's that same length will get me from the edge of the window to this beam, or from the edge of the window to this beam. So you can use this for taking different measurements and really helping you along your drawing. I feel like I want to light another candle. So just draw for a second and ask any questions you want. I'll take a peek. And I'm going to add another candle here. Did I take the reference picture? No, Martina, I wish I had. Most of the reference pictures that I've done for Inktober are from photographs that I took, but I was running out of material. I wasn't really running out of material, but it was getting to the point where, certain I wanted to do different house styles than I necessarily had photo references for. So I had a lot of photo references for houses that are similar. And so what I did was I go on the royalty-free sites like Unsplash, Picabay is another one. And I just looked for royalty-free images, and then I chose those for these other drawings. If I wasn't drawing to share with the world, I wouldn't necessarily be as completely worried, because you can change up enough things that you're inspired by an image and not copying it exactly. I never copy things exactly anyway. There's always a bit of leeway, but because I'm showing it on a public format, I wanted to pick a royalty-free image for this. Okay, let's do these. Let's do this, and then we'll do the circles or ovals. The other thing I would have students do is, if they like an image and it's available like on Pinterest or one of the bigger formats, or even Instagram, just send a message to the person who created it and ask them if you can use it, and or if you can, purchase rights to use it. And often people are really generous, especially if you promise to give them credit. There we go. This board that's under here, I'm just going to darken it. I've lost a little bit of the scallop there in that, which I'm not crazy about, but I do think that when I erase the graphite, that will reappear a bit more, if that makes sense. I'll show you what I mean. Let's test it out. Yeah, so you can see the scallop a little more. And again, that is very subtle anyway. You don't notice that scallop as much unless you're absolutely staring just at that one part of the drawing. So during COVID, the 1.0, the original COVID, when the world was on lockdown for the first time, I had it. I got it from the hospital. Nice little parting gift. And I was really unwell for about 3 months, where I was in bed and everybody was terrified of me. So I was in quarantine in my room. My husband and daughter brought me, my meals and took care of me, and would come and, sit across the room by an open window. And my daughter, well, they both would read me books and things, but I was too unwell to do art, but I wasn't too unwell to watch videos. So one of the things that I did was signed up for some online lessons with a few of my favorite artists. And this was something, again, that they didn't normally offer, but because it was, because it was the end of times, and people were looking for different ways to earn money, they were offering classes. So I took a class with one of my favorite artists. Her name is Kathy Odom, Odom, and she's an oil painter, and just, I love the way she paints. And one of the things, although I wasn't painting along, I was watching, and one of the things that I noticed that she did was, she often, even though she knew how to draw accurately, she would often change the perspective of a building and make it look quirkier. And I really liked that. So ever since then, I'm more carefree about those kinds of things. right? Like I want to be careful here because you can see that it's really dark under this, but I want these little things to still stand out. So this side's definitely better. And again, when I erase the graphite, I usually do it all at the end, but just to, those will pop out a bit more. All right. I love the fact that this chimney is like really wonky. All right, so let's tackle this window. I think especially with this little cottage, you know, these round windows, everything was handmade. And so it lends itself nicely to drawing freehand like this. So I did not put in these little spokes, so I'm gonna just freehand that. And again, I'm not counting like how many there are. I'm just gonna it's good enough. And now we'll do this little, this one is much more oval. And I'll go in later and add the different details, the shading. I don't know if you can hear the wind outside my window, but we have a storm brewing here. Now, one thing I didn't do is I didn't really leave enough room for this board. Do you see that? So I'm trying to decide, do I want to put it in? I probably should put it in. There, my board's slightly different, but that's okay. And this is going to be fun to do all of this metal work on the door. Yeah, there's some type of design here. I just want to stop, zoom in on that. I think it's actually some type of an image, like a fairy dancing, or I don't know. What do you think? Butterflies. It's so small though, and this is where you have that issue of you can't draw what you can't see, or I mean, like you can't. Well, you could do whatever you want, but if I can't see it, and it's so tiny, I just want to give reference to the fact that there is something there. Just like that. All right, and then I've done this woodwork a bit wider, so I'm going to connect this side out a bit more so that it's the same. And then when I go in, you know, with my little wood grain or some shading, it'll all make better sense. All right. So I didn't draw that in. So I want to put that in first before I draw in these wood pieces because it's in front of them. So it's just a little circle. I mean, the way I would do that is I would just look to see where it is. It's basically in the center between these two windows. So you've got a little circle, and then you've got basically a rectangle with a little, you know, curve on the bottom. So just keep it simple. Draw my little circle there. That's quite dark. And then my little rectangle. And then a little curve. There we go. Now we have a little lantern. And yeah, so we've done the scary bits. I mean, we've done the curve, we've done the little filigree. Now we just need to put in some of this woodwork. I'm not going to put this rope in. I mean, what do you guys think? Partly because I don't think it serves any purpose on the structure. It's visually a bit distracting, and it does, because I didn't draw it in to begin with, it's a lighter value than everything else, so it's just kind of, I'd have to draw it as a dark value, if that makes sense, or go in with whiting to draw it, and I don't really like it that much. What do you guys think? Let me know. Are you gonna draw it? You were thinking about the same rope as the, yeah, exactly. Oh, hi, Chill Pixie. You came across my Instagram page randomly while scrolling through the reels. Oh, I'm so glad that I ignited a passion in watercolor for you. You're more in awe of your surroundings. I mean, that's the thing about art, is when you do art, when you start to create, or even just watch other people creating, you start to see the world in a different way. And that's probably my favorite thing about art, is the way it changes my perception of the world. And you take nice pictures and you're always like, wow, this would be beautiful as a painting. Well, I think, Jill Pixie, maybe it's time for you to start painting. I mean, we all have the hidden artist within us, don't we? Okay, so I had not drawn this window yet, so I'm just going to put this in with the shutters. These shutters have sort of a star pattern cut out with these little things, so I've just indicated those. And let's just put that in. right, that's that tricky part finished. Chill Pixie, exactly. You bought everything from the, you bought everything for the watercolor kit and you carry it with me. Oh, that makes me so happy. You're not as good, you need practice. You know, we all need practice all the time. No matter how accomplished you become as an artist, you're always learning. That's another nice thing about art. And yeah, practice and patience will get you there. And Illustrator Traveler, not trying to make it perfect has helped you lately. Yeah, it's definitely. I was very kind of photorealistic in my early years, and a lot of people want to learn that. They want to learn how to do photorealism, and so I still find myself not having to, but choosing to teach that because people like to learn it. But I don't like to draw that way anymore. I like to be more painterly. I like to be a bit more imperfect. And you know, our eye doesn't see things in very sharp linear terms. Our eyes blur things together a little bit more as we see it. So, I mean, that's a real appeal of art. When somebody was asking about, I can't remember who it was, it's further back in the comments, but one way to use the skewer would be like if I was doing these, when I was drawing in these shutters, I knew that, you know, well, I think they're functional, but if they're not, I want them to be functional in my little world that I'm creating here on the page, putting in some of the hinges there. And so I knew that it was going to fold over this window, right? I'm going to shade in the wood a little bit more there. And so I knew that it needed to be half the size of the window, right? So can you see that? That is half of that. And then that's the same size. And so when they, you know, if they wanted to close, they could fit. But I can do that same thing with the shish kebab skewer. I'll show you on here instead of on the drawing, or on the photograph. But so if I wanted to, I could just take half the window, and then I could see that that's where this line is going to be, and then draw the curve, the half curve to mimic that side. All right, so we're just putting in the last of these wood pieces. Oh, look, I missed a piece. Just add that in. And then for these stones, well, there's a nice wooden plank here, windowsill, with the shading underneath. And there's a row of thinner stones. And then these are more organic in shape. So this is another thing I don't ever feel like I need to draw exactly what I see. Like if I see, I like the shape of that one and that one and that one. So I'll put those three in more or less where they are and more or less in a similar shape. And then I just sort of give an indication of the other things, the other stones around there. You don't see them all, your eye doesn't see them all. Not if you're looking at the whole of the picture, only if you're staring at that area. So let's not make it too fussy. And then there's this stone in front of it. Just knock in that shape. And that's pretty much how I like to do stone walls or stone foundation. And there's a lot of that in England, so I find myself drawing a lot of those types of facades. So where are you all from? I'd love to know. Or where are you all tuning in from today? Okay, so this side is the same. And my foundation, I can see the earth comes up to this, so it's not straight. None of this is straight. It's very earthy and jagged. And here we've got the bottom of the door. Then there's a little bit of a lighter value. And then this plank of wood, the threshold, which is going to be darker. Just do a little bit of hatching there now. Get a head start. All right. And some of these stones are darker than others, so as I'm putting them in, I'm going to just do a little bit of shading now. I can tweak that more later, but if I see a really dark stone, if I'm squinting, there's a really dark stone down here. There's dark bit. There's some darker bits around here and here. And so I'm paying more attention, as always, to the value than I am to the shape in a situation like that. And then again, this chimney is stone, so let's just put in some of those. And we'll go in later with hatching and some cross hatching to alter the value, but I just want to give reference to the fact that there are stones here. Yeah, so it's going to be fun to go in with the watercolor. I don't normally wait as long as I will have done. I normally do the watercolor right away, but it's going to be fun to do the painting. Martina, you're from Tunis. Yes, I knew. I knew where you're from. I know, Chris, you're from somewhere in the South, in America, but I don't remember which state. If you're still here, and okay, so for these shingles, these can be really tricky, and they can, I don't know, cause a nervous breakdown. So what I like to do for this is, again, squint at it and look at the different pattern that you see here. I mean, it's basically just a pattern of different lines. Some go, vertically, and some are horizontal, and they're all different. So it can actually be a lot of fun. So you just play around with putting in different lines, and don't worry about creating, it to look exactly as it is. The human eye is very clever, and it can fill in the blanks. And things are a little bit closer together down at the bottom because this curve means that we're looking at some of these shingles kind of more at an angle instead of straight up and down. But there's a lot of higgledy-piggledy to this, which is fun. There we go. I think that is probably enough for now. I don't want to overgild the lily too much right now. And I'll go in and I'll add some more shading in that later. And then it's the same really for this portion of the roof, although it's at less of an angle, so there's a bit more of a pattern to it. Oh, Illustravler, first time joining today from Istanbul. Oh, wonderful. What's your weather like in Tunis and Istanbul? I'd love to know. It's currently, we had daylight savings in the UK. I don't know if either of your countries do daylight savings. I know the US does. But the UK does it earlier than the US. So we get an extra hour today. But as a result, it should be 4:30 and it's really, or should be 4. Well, it is 4. It should be 5. It should be an hour later than it is. So it's quite dark, even though, yeah, it's that time of year. Okay. And I think that is probably a good amount for now. Oh, there is a little bit of, I do see a little bit of the edge of this right there. So let's just put that in. Okay. No daylight savings in Tunis. It's usually warm. How nice. Warm sounds really nice. And it's around 16 today, not very cold. That sounds great. Yeah, I haven't really been out. I've had a lazy day. I was out with the dog a little bit. It was pretty warm here, but a storm is brewing for sure. All right, so for this log, I'm just, there's a dark bit down here. All right, and now I would love to hear everyone's opinion about this little circle here. I wasn't sure if I was going to put it in. I sketched it in case I wanted to, but is it necessary? I'm going to wait on that because I really would love to hear some comments about that from you all. Do you think, I know in the photo it's nice, but in the drawing, do I want it there? Or do I just want to do a path and keep the focus on the cottage? The problem when you start adding too many elements is it can get a little bit busy. And remember, I want this cottage to be the star of the show, right? I don't want the star to be this. I don't want the eye to get caught up here, which I'm afraid it might do. So I'm going to hold off. I'm just going to put in kind of the edges of this path here. And I'm going to wait to hear what you all want me to do. I'll draw around all of those elements in case. You added them with ink already, Martina. How do they look? Let me know. Are you happy with them or do you wish that you hadn't? Look at how fast you are. You're done already. You're not being all timid like me. All right, so now I want to put in just some of these main trunks before I go in with some of the foliage. Martina, you regret everything. Oh no. I'm sorry to hear it. I was feeling jealous. I was like, man, she's probably all done. And here I am still like, haven't even added texture yet. The other thing I'm not sure about, there's this little notch here. Do you see that? I don't think I like it. I think I'd rather just keep this as a trunk. I've kind of left the option open, but I would love to hear people's opinion on that too. So let me know what y'all think. I'm gonna put in some of this texture from the ground. All right, I only have your comments so far, Martina. People are leaving me in the lurch here. Do I add the logs or do I not add the logs? I'm just putting in, I just want to mark, in fact, I'm going to use my 01 for this, but I just want to mark where some of these main tree trunks are because I like them. This one's actually light, so I'm going to go around it and then hopefully be able to leave it. I like that there's a lighter branch in there. And then this, we have a birch, like a birch tree over here as well, which is at a very quirky angle, which I love. Kind of gives it that storybook look. I should be using a thicker pen for this. And so I'm just marking where these are because I want to make sure that I don't go over them too heavily with the shading. Oh, there's like a little bench here. I'm going to ignore that. There are some white saplings here. Do I want those? Nah, skip it. You know what I'll do? I'm going to make this longer. As if it's coming from around here with some foliage. Nah, no, I'm not. Just put some, that, there's some rocks. All right, I'm at the stage now where I'm almost ready to erase all of the rest of the graphite. So I need to make a decision. about this bit. Oh, how quickly losing all your light values, aching for some heavy acrylic titanium. That's okay. I mean, add it if you need to. I mean, ink can be white, you know. I have used this in one or two of my drawings. Although my paper is a little bit cream, so this tends to be not exactly the same color, but I like this Posca marker. And then I have, you know, the jelly roll as well. And there's no reason you can't add some white in with it if you're finding that it's getting a bit too dark. All right, so Martina, I think you're the only person answering my questions right now. So so it's up to you. What do you think? Should I do them? Should I not do them? Should I do this? I mean, that's weird. It's just like it goes to a point, like a branch that got cut off. This is obviously not a real trunk. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to cut it off like that. That to me seems more realistic. Martina's not taking, you're not going to take the blame if I hate it, are you, Martina? It's very smart. All right. This is the stage where I'm standing up and I'm taking a look. Yeah, I think I'm going to put it in. I mean, I already drew them, right? Okay. I don't have to make a feature of them. I can just put them in. They're already drawn. That's a nice opportunity to do some texture. And I'm doing it a bit lighter at the bottom for now because I'll add some shading there later. Oh, I missed a stone over here. I'm going to move it away from this a bit. Yeah, if I was going to go in with white ink, it would be nice to add some of these saplings after the fact. And when I go in with paint, I think that I'm very likely going to, on some of these, you know, that got really dark, I'll probably be adding gouache or maybe doing mixed media just to kind of go over some of the areas with color. And that's the trick when you're doing when you're doing an ink drawing and you want it to be line and wash, is making sure you retain enough area. Yeah, all right. Now this little thing in the center, I wish it was more of a campfire, but it is what it is. I mean, I could try to draw a campfire, but I'm not gonna. Use this thicker nib. So the shading is on the inside here. Okay, it's done. So when I was doing my sketches last night, I actually went on some of the, you know, the replays of the live streams from other artists, and I thought, you know, it's quite nice to draw with somebody else, even if, you know, only one of you is talking. It's nice to think, you know, you're drawing whilst somebody else is drawing. All right, Martina. You need the solidarity, right? It looks like a WC. Maybe. No, don't say that. No. Mine or yours or both of ours. You know, we can always make it more cauldron-like. Or fire pit-like. I like that better. Just keep this ridge there. You're the artist. You can do whatever you want. All right. All right, so now it's time to erase. Oh, and I don't have an eraser handy. Okay, it's at the fun part now, where we erase the graphite and then we add all the texture. That's my favorite part, really. I missed this part. Let's pop that in first. Wow, the sun's really going down fast. I hope you can still see well enough. I've got my ring light above here. I mean, technically I don't need to erase the graphite. A lot of people will just leave it, but I like for the ink to do the work. Okay, so you can see a lot of the value that was really there from, we missed somebody. Sorry about that. All right, a lot of the value that was there is gone now. So it's time to add it with the ink, which is fun. And this I've shown before, but what I like to do is I like to make a duplicate of the painting or photograph, and then I make it black and white. And I have 3 options for black and white. I've got mono, silver tone, or noir. So I'm going to stand up actually and take a look back. I want it to be more dramatic, but not spooky. I don't think I like that one as much this time. I think for me it's between the mono and the noir. Let me know if you have an opinion, anybody. Again, that's mono, silver tone, noir. Oh, I kind of like the silver tone now. No. I'm thinking mono. And what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for a really good depiction of the darks and the lights. That's going to make the ink drawing look as good as it possibly can. All right, I think I'm going to go with that. That's the mono. And this is really helpful when you're working in black and white. It's helpful even if you're working in color, just to see where the darkest darks and the lights are. And so I like to do this before I go to the full texture stage. And for the very darkest areas, I'll use the 01. And for the areas that are going to just need more texture, I'll use the 005. All right. So this part goes a lot more quickly than the other part because I've got the skeleton of everything that I want up there already. So some of these lines I want to be a bit more defined and bold. And then I don't know if I want to, I mean, that definitely, this board, all of these boards, watch, I'll shade them like this. I don't want to shade them completely, and they're definitely a darker value. So I want to go underneath the scalloping, but I don't want to lose the scalloping. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker than it is, even though, I mean, the shadow makes it a bit darker. One thing I didn't talk about is, where's the light source? Where is the light source? Oh, it's hard to tell. It's coming from this direction. Yeah, so this area would be darker. You can see it. It is a bit darker. If you're drawing along, I'd love to know if you're drawing the same thing. Or how your drawing's coming along. Yeah, that's the way I did it on that side, I like better, which is actually traced over the scalloping. Just to help it stand out a bit more. I think I might do that here, see if I can. I like that. There's a bit of shading here. We can see a little bit of the side. And then, so I can see these light areas really well when I move the picture to black and white. And I'm also squinting at it, even though it is already black and white, just to see. So I do want to shade in these boards, but I don't want to shade them too much. Also, I'm keeping in mind the fact that I'm planning to add color at some point. So I don't want to make it so that somebody working in watercolor couldn't have a color show up over that. So Martina, do you still have visitors from out of the area? I know you had people visiting. Okay. All right, so just in adding texture, I'm adding a light bit of texture to all of these areas. All right, so there's some really interesting, sorry about that noise, somebody's got a little motorbike outside. When am I coming? One of your friends from Holland left a couple of days ago. I'll be right there. Someday would be great. Okay, I want to do this. So there's a bit of shading in there. You can see there's a tree trunk from, you know, from where the viewer is standing. But it's pretty light, so I'm gonna not get too detailed. And I feel like I want to darken this there where the shadow would be. Darken that area a bit. And darken that shading underneath. I said the light source is coming from this way, but the more I look at it, I feel like it's coming, well, it's coming from overhead, but it's difficult with trees. This area of the door is definitely darker than this side. It's nice to draw, gosh. I love painting too, but sometimes it's just so nice to draw. All right, so I'm just trying to match my values. I'm gonna actually wait and make sure that ink is completely dry, but I think there's some garbage there to still get rid of. And these, the rooftops, this is darker. And there's, that area's a bit darker. This is kind of outlined, this window. And then the door is not quite as dark as the woodwork, but it is a darker value than white. It's a start. Sorry, that squeaking is me trying to film interesting bits with my phone. So I'm going in with my darker, thicker nib just to put in where some of these darkest areas of this trunk are. I'm happy with my decision to just leave a little nub and not that long snaky thing. And once I've got the darkest darks in, I'll go in and I'll add a bit of a mid value with my 005. Erase this. Make sure all that graphite's gone from that area. What time is it? I think I've been 4:45. Have I been on that long? Gosh, I guess I have. This is a very long live stream. Sorry, I must have talked way too much. All right. All right, so I'm going to darken some of these. Okay. And the earth is definitely a lot darker. These wood chips, there's a texture. I'm gonna anchor this building a bit more. This chimney breast has got to get a little bit darker. Against the house there. Like that. All right. Now I'm regretting the logs a bit. Didn't realize I was chatting quite so much. Normally, if I wasn't on a live stream, I would be able to knock out this drawing in probably an hour. The inking part, rather. All right, so I'm just going to put in some of the texture. Let's just show that these are logs. It is nice. I want to visit this house. It's lovely, isn't it? What do you think? Would you live here? I think I could live there, although I don't really get on with the woods. I'm allergic to mold, and there's a lot of mold in the woods. And I like sunlight, so I don't know if I could live here, but I could definitely go away here for a weekend. I'm going to make this board a little bit thicker. And I'm underlining some of these boards are more distinctive. And so I'm not normally a fan of like just outlining things, but if it needs it, it needs it. Just gives it a bit more distinction. I have to be careful to not just outline everything or it starts to look too fussy, you know, or too like not realistic, and it will lose its charm if I get too outliney. The music stopped again. It's our third go around on the same CD. That tells me I've been on a long time. We didn't even get to the woods yet. I would change the CD, but we need to get down to business here. Okay. All right. I think we got all the main characters here. Now we just need to dress them up a bit more. I want to make this fire pit cauldron-y thing a bit darker. Wow, I'm losing my daylight. That's daylight savings for you. Normally it would be, even on a long live stream, I had plenty of sunlight left to walk the dog and to feel like my day, I still had some day. All right, so this, you can see this and this and this, they're darker values. So I've got my way. I want the wrong one. I want the 01. And I'm going to stand up. Martina, yeah, you've outlined too much. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's tricky. If you outline too much, you can always just go fill in the bits in between. Like I feel like this is outlined a bit much, so maybe I want to darken some of the area between, and that's like that. And that helps it. It's a little trick. Okay, wood chips. I'm going to put in the texture and then I'm going to shade. So the texture is like, remember, I like to pretend that I am an alien from another planet. All of this is strange to me. I'm just drawing what I see. I don't know what it is. I don't know how. I'm just drawing the value, and I'm drawing shapes. And if I can think about it like that in my head, then I can see there's some light specks of value, right? And the texture is small and kind of rough. So I'm just thinking about it that way. I'm thinking about texture and value and shape. So this whole area is darker, but because there is some of that lighter, it's not white, but there is some lighter value speckled in there. So I'm creating a texture with the pen like this. I do that first, and then I go in when I'm satisfied that it's pretty close to what I want it to be. Then I'll darken it. And I can tell you, like this area here, I wish that it wasn't as dark. Hoping that maybe there's some graphite in there I missed. That's a little better. Because you can see that although this is a gray value, it's lighter than this. All right, so now I'm gonna go in with the 05. Whoops. And just do some hatching. And then cross hatching. And you can see it gives me some texture and speckling. It is still darker, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken it around the base. I don't want to get it quite as dark as it is. Again, I'm thinking that I'll be adding watercolor at some point. So I don't want to go, it's like almost black. I don't want to go that dark, but I'm going to go darker around the foundation because that's typical. You know, you have shading and settling, and this area is normally darker anyway. All right, and now I'm going to do that same thing over here, and then I'll revisit it and see if any of it needs a bit more hatching or if it's pretty good. And then this is all lighter, but it is speckled, so I'll add some stuff there. But I'm going to do these bits of these darker wood chips first. So again, just putting in some of the speckles. Paul, how is Poppy? She is doing well. She's left. She's gone. And I think she's laying down, or maybe she asked my husband to take her for a walk because she knew it was getting dark. I'll walk her in the dark though. If he hasn't, we'll go together after. She was sick for a while. I think maybe that's why you're asking. But in terms of that, she's recovered and she's doing much better. Thank you. Poppy's my dog, for anybody who doesn't know. Okay, only the diehards are here now. When the live stream goes over an hour, I have to get better about. I'm interrupting myself. I don't want to go all the way to the edge. Remember, I like to keep a bit of a vignette if I can. So I'm going to bleed it out, but not go all the way to the end. And there are these saplings here that are white, but I'm just going to skip them because maybe when I go on with the painting, I'll add them then with like a Posca pen or some white gouache or some bleed-proof white ink. which I like to use. Again, just putting in this texture. It's a haphazard, keeping some of the lights. And it gets darker as it goes out. So I'm going to just move to the... And again, atmospheric perspective, the closer things are to you, the darker they are in general. So it makes sense that it would be a little bit darker over here. There's a lot of texture. It's quite an ambitious drawing, really. I mean, the whole postcard is going to be filled almost, because there's trees and there's wood chips, and then there's the beautiful building and stones and this fire pit in the circle. And yeah, it looks lovely. I wish I was going here for a bonfire. It'd be nice to sit out around here. Okay, now I'm switching to the lighter pen again as I get further in the distance. And then we'll do the same thing over here. And I'm going a little bit faster now because, just because of time. I don't like my live streams to be hours. Although I know people can always catch the replay and you can fast forward to the bits that you like. But also because I want to get on with my day. I've got other drawings to do. I didn't finish my drawing from yesterday. So I've got to make up one, so I'll have to do another one. And then I noticed as I was putting together all of my drawings that I was missing a day. Well, I wasn't. I mean, I had done a really horrible drawing that I hated. And then I thought, oh, I'll just do another one later to replace it. And I thought that I had, but I can't find it. So, and that was that horrible one. I'm not going to even show it again. But it's just an example that everybody still can fail no matter how experienced you are. Yeah, it was a really simple structure. It was a day when I was tired and I thought, I'll just do a very easy building. But sometimes those easy buildings, they're harder to look nice, you know, because they just tend to look a bit like, you know, a 5-year-old did it. And so then I thought, oh, I'll be clever and I'll add some clouds in the sky. And then it kind of just looked worse. It just went downhill very quickly. And that happens. So now I know, I've learned, if I draw a more simple structure like that again, which I have done since, I'm more careful to not outline much at all, be very careful about where I want to add things, and not do the sky. Don't do clouds with ink, unless maybe you're doing an ink wash. It wasn't a good look. If you haven't seen it now, you're probably curious. But it was, yeah, it's just a simple box-like building. The photograph was very rustic and very clean and simple, but it didn't look well. All right, so I've got a lot of different texture created here now. You can get the sense that there's different stuff going on. And I'm going to, with my lighter one, I mean, this isn't white. This other area of the path, it's not as light as the building. I'm going to leave the building as my whitest white, or my lightest light, because it is. So even though it's not pure white either, it's like this creamy color, it's the lightest value that I have. So I'm going to leave it white because I want to keep white in my picture. And this is almost there, but not quite. And so I'm just going to add just a little bit of some of these darker chips here and there haphazardly. And a little bit here. There's a bit of a stream of light coming in. And I'll go over and I'll darken this a little bit. Maybe I won't. I think actually just doing this bit of stippling is going to be enough. Add a shadow here. Put shadows around. I'm going with the fact that I think the light is streaming from the right, so most of my darker, more extreme shadows are going to be coming from that direction. So I think just this bit of stippling is going to separate the value from the house enough and still give you the sense that there's some texture and organic stuff happening here. And so, yeah, next Sunday in the live stream, we'll be painting. So that'll be fun. All right, so just anchoring these a little bit, giving them a bit of shadow. It's going to help make them look more realistic. And the shadows actually, I think this, I'm going to make it, I think. Do you see this little bit of highlight here? I think that the light source is coming from this way. So the sun is pretty high up in the sky, but it's not straight up. So the shadows are not going to be super long. So just this little bit of shading is going to be enough. The lower, and I mean, you might already know this, but the lower that the sun sets, the longer the shadows get, and that's when things become really beautiful. They call that the golden hour. A lot of filmmakers film then. I like to plein air paint either early in the morning or later in the day because of that. But in the woods, and this is as close to the golden hours you're gonna get. All right, so now I'm gonna do some hatching here just to add. And then some of these stones, they have some shading on the back. We've determined where our light source is. I've talked before about Mr. Tinman, and he deserves to be talked about again because he was a retired illustrator who I took oil painting lessons from starting when I was 6 and until I was around 12. And I'd go there every Saturday and paint. And I mean, there's only so much you can teach somebody who's 6 to 12 that they're going to retain forever. So it was mostly like I just would paint things and he would come around and give me suggestions as I went. But one of the things that he always talked about, and I didn't fully appreciate it at that time, but I do now, is he always said, you know, where's your light source? And I almost didn't really know what he meant. I mean, I'd kind of wait for him to tell me where it was. I couldn't figure it out, but it's one of those things that stayed with me all these years. And I understand now how important it is, because your light source determines where the values fall, and that's what's going to make something look convincing to the viewer. So I'm putting in some of these shadows here, and darkening some of these areas before we get into the trees. And again, because we're in the woods, you know, these windows aren't going to be completely clear. They've got, I'm really not happy with this window. So let's make it better. That's another thing I like about using the 005 is when you outline things, it's not going to be as harsh. There's a bit of shading there. If our light source is coming from this way, there's going to be more shading here. I mean, I can see it. I'm not just making this up. And I can see a bit of these hinges on the shutters. So I think they are functional. And I'm squinting, I'm standing, I'm looking at things, fine tuning. This is a bit darker up on the ridge. And I haven't done the shingles. They're going to be about the same value as this. But I want to do them a little bit lighter because I think they'll contrast better with the background. If I get too dark on these, I might even wait on the shingles until after I've done the trees, because I want the house, you know, the house is the star of the show. I want it to pop forward. And if I get, too dark, then, you know, there's no going back. So there's a bit of a highlight over here. So I'm going to put that in. And I want to preserve that. And I think what I might do, let's get fancy. In for a penny, in for a pound, right? We've gone this late. And anybody can just watch this later. But I'm taking my Molotow marker, which I use all the time when I'm doing my tiny paintings. And because I want to I want to be loose with my shading. I don't want to be worried about not getting into this little light area. I'm taking a scrap piece of paper and see, this is why you want to do it on a scrap, because if you get a big blob like, I mean, although it's all erasable, any of these are the Posca pens or any of these pump markers. There, see now, like that, no good. This is about what I want it to be. So I'm happy with the inking I've done here. So I'm gonna protect that area because I want to really have a sharp line there that's preserved, and same with this part of the roof. And I mean, what the heck, let's just do this too, just to make life a bit quicker. This is dark, but there's a little highlight there. And there's just some highlights here. Now, remember, I'm gonna erase all this later. But it's just gonna make the shading a bit kind of more free and fun. I don't like the way I did this ellipse here because it's wrong. And I'm switching, my ADD is showing. I'm switching, like this is wrong. I don't see, so I'm just gonna do that. And I'm gonna go in with a jelly roll. It's more like that shape, right? There, I'm happier with that. Okay, so it's looking good. I'm feeling somewhat pleased. There's hope. That's a cleaner line, so. Okay. All right, so again, my alien comment, I'm just going in with value. So this is all quite dark. Believe it or not, I thought that today's live stream was going to be kind of fast, like more like last week's, but sometimes they trick you, these. Of all of the sketches I did yesterday in preparation to see, because I wasn't sure which photograph people would choose to want to draw, this was the easiest to draw. And then the second easiest was the little cute townhouse. And then the hardest was this, really. Well, no, actually, I think this townhouse was a little bit harder. So it's hard to do symmetry and make it accurate, but not like too rigid. Okay, so this, by the way, it's dry enough. And now I can kind of get so close to it and I don't have to worry. It'll get me right up to the edge without it being manufactured where I have to like kind of scribble. All right, so yeah, the darkest area is here. A lot of darks around this tree even. Again, I don't want to get all the way to the edge of the paper. And I think some of these saplings, I'm going to leave them out. I mean, the other option to keep it loose and accurate would be to go in with a pen later and put them in, but I'm not going to do that. I almost feel like that is a bit too dark in some areas, but so I'm just following the values and kind of thinking about like what kind of texture is it and how dark is the value. Again, if we go to this, you can see how dark that is. Now, all those other light bits, those are saplings. I mean, if I wanted to be really intricate, I could draw around them, but it would just take so long and look a bit manufactured. All right, I'm just kind of wanting to preserve the tree here. In fact, if I go in with what I could do, put in a few of those branches. See, I can't get quite thin enough. And this one's light, so this would be a good one. I wish they made, maybe they do. I've never seen it smaller than 2 millimeters, these pump markers with the masking fluid. And I think this one's sort of light. But darker down here, so. But this will make it a bit easier and it'll preserve those whites, which are going to make it pop a bit better. And if you don't have one of these, but you do have masking fluid, you can just use masking fluid. You don't need the pen. One tip about these is sometimes if it seems really thin, like it didn't cover well enough, just do another coat on top of it, because I don't know why, but it's harder to remove it when it's too thin, and you can run the risk of kind of staining or ripping your paper, which we don't want. So I'll often do 2 coats. And if I'm doing my tiny painting and I'm painting outside, I'll just move to another area of the painting to work on whilst I wait for that to dry. Sometimes I'll add it before I get to any of the watercolor at all. All right. So people probably just tuning in are probably wondering what's with the blue, but that will all be erased. Okay, so now I'm just playing around with the value, and it's still wet. So don't want to blow out the candle. So let's move to this area. Now there's some type of like a fence post. Actually, if I put that in, it's going to look like a crucifix. So I'm just going to ignore that and treat it like a tree. Right, so I'll put it in as like a tree that maybe was cut down with my darker pen. Now there's a lot of bits going on and overlapping, and so I'm just gonna draw it like I see it, focusing on the values and not trying to give anything a name. There's a light, you can see there's a light little strip between this tree trunk. If I'd been planning a bit more carefully, I probably would have moved this over. And the tree sort of moves, so it's really dark there. So I'm just focusing on the values. And then we've got this tree, which sort of leans in, because our perspective is, we're looking up at the house a little bit. So the trees are going to not go straight up. They curve in a bit. And we've got some branches. I'm not going to put in everything, and I'm not concerned about everything being exactly where it is in the photo. The photo is just going to offer me like a basic framework. And so I see some of these higgledy-piggledy branches. And just putting in a few. And then here, it's forest stuff. So it's lighter down here. We've got some branches here. And then it starts to get darker around here. And just putting in value and texture. If you didn't want to put in the texture, you could kind of go more with shapes, adding those first, and then just doing the hatching like that to create different values. But I like the kind of the busyness of the shapes. Keeping in mind that there's going to be a bit more of a highlight on that. for these are more wispy, so I'm going with my finer nib. And if you're just tuning in or if you're watching the replay, my live streams are not normally this long. I think I over-explained or talked too much, but now I'm at the point where I'm just wanting to add the finishing touches and call it a day. Go and enjoy some time. And there's a lot of sky showing through at this point, at this stage. There's a lot of sky holes. And so with painting, a lot of times you'll just put that in later. You put the sky holes in after the fact. But when you're drawing with ink, it just makes sense to leave it. You know, where with watercolor, you're going to leave the space. You leave the light areas. And so because I mean, it works the same with ink, whether I'm going to go in with watercolor or not. And this is really sparse. There's some here, but it's not a lot. So I'm just kind of going between these two pens, the dark and the light. And I'm standing up a lot and squinting a lot, which you can't see, but I'm standing up because it's important to get a distance, to create some distance between yourself and what you're drawing. And now this is just, it's a fir tree. We can darken this little branch a bit more, or this trunk. And then put in the clusters. As we see them. So I've enjoyed this series, this October drawing series. I started, as you may know, I started drawing live twice a week. It was a bit much to commit to. And I have a lot of other stuff going on during the week, so it was just hard to promise that I was always going to be available on Thursdays. And so I've liked this Sunday. It gives me time to look forward to it. I can do a poll and ask people what they want to draw. And so when I started, I thought, well, I'll do Inktober and then we'll see how it goes. But I'm enjoying it. And I think for November, the plan of doing the watercolors of some of these drawings, that's the plan. So hopefully people will like that. Now there is some shading like on the bottoms of some of these clumps. There's more shading. more shadows, rather. There's something there from the roof. I'm not putting that in. I don't know what it is, and I think it would end up looking strange. And again, this area here is a lot like this area. It's just lots of lights and darks. I don't want to be too sloppy, but I do want to be kind of loose and quick. Again, remember, this is just the frame for the cottage. There's an area here where it's lighter. And then it just kind of fades up into how's this looking on the screen? What do you think? Sometimes I watch parts of the replay and I think, oh, I overdid it there. And that happens, but you learn. And sometimes the stuff that you hate the most or that you dislike the most is the stuff that other people really like. So the Storybook Cottage, or not the Storybook Cottage, that's this. The boathouse that I did last week, I wasn't that happy with it, but it's my husband's favorite, so go figure. People like different things. Now this, what really sets this off, this tree, that it will be white underneath here, is that it has very dark values surrounding it. And then this tree, it's sort of like this. There's and then kind of frames around the cottage like that. There's some darker values in here. But there's a lot of lighter value in some of these. And at this point, again, I'm just drawing value. I'm not worried about giving it a name. I'm looking at the shapes. So there's this dark shape. I'm not getting it exactly like that, but I'm giving kind of the basic idea. So there's dark, and then there's light, and then there's dark. And it has sort of a sweeping motion that kind of goes at an angle. So I want to give just some suggestions to the value and the motion, the rhythm of it. And I can just kind of have fun doing that without getting too caught up in making it perfect. So my shape isn't exactly like that one, but it's close enough, and it kind of gives that suggestion of lighter leaves and darker ones and shadow and light. Okay, so I want to some of these lighter valued ones. Yeah, this is really a complicated drawing when you connect the background to it. If I was painting this, if I was painting it in my sketchbook or something, I would do a lot less of this ink normally, which is kind of what's been a fun thing about the Inktober challenge, is trying to make these drawings complete as ink drawings whilst keeping in mind that I'm planning, to add value later. All right, so that's around that area, that's that. Snakes around, that's that. And then there's a darker area above it. I want to go in with this first. Don't want it to be too heavy because it's not quite as deepy, inky dark as that. Martina about being sloppy, it was intentional. Yeah. When I was looking at my drawings yesterday, because I was trying to just sort of assess what I had done and where I wanted to go for the last few days, there was one drawing where I got really sloppy at the end, and I was really bummed about it. So that's a warning sign to not be too... All right, so yeah, I've preserved some of the lighter values there. And there's like some lightness here too. There's a bit of, that bit there, I kind of need it. Keeping in mind that this is light, this area is light. We're getting there, folks. Yeah, there was daylight when I started and it's completely dark outside right now. So hopefully the ring light is doing its magic. There's a little bit of, I'll just add a little bit of stippling here. It's not completely. And again, going in with a lighter pen because I don't want it to be super, super dark. All right, now this area, some darkness around that part of the house. Darken some of these areas. So I'm standing up a lot at this point and just taking a look to see where I want to add these final touches. We still have to do this area, and then we'll remove the masking fluid. And so there's an area here again that's light. So I'm going to go in with my lighter pen at first. There are a few like kind of branches and just some lighter. I wish this was a bit lighter. I think it'll be all right. so I can go around that area now. These darker leaves. And again, here at the base, this, you know, if the light source is coming from here, it makes sense that this is really dark. The only thing that's preventing that from being dark are these leaves that are overlapping. And again, I could have plotted those out, but I think if they're that important to me, I'll add them at the watercolor stage on the postcard prints, the coloring sheet prints that I'm going to make. All right, so there's some these lighter areas sort of sneak around in here. So I'm putting in the curve, and my little dog wants her walk, or maybe she's back from a walk. This tree, that it starts light, but then you see a dark bit of branch up here. I don't know if it's from the same tree. I believe it is. So we'll just put a bit of that in. I got it in the kind of the wrong area, but that's all right. There could be another tree there. And then just finishing putting in some of these really dark areas behind this bit of white. And then I'll go in with the hatching that'll tie it all together a bit at the end. You can see I'm getting a lot sloppier, but these are meant to be sketches and not necessarily perfectly rendered drawings. So we've got this bit that goes over. So I kind of messed up a little bit here. I've, sorry about that. I was going for this bit of dark tree branch, which would be here. And then, so what I'm trying to do here is to make my mistake here work for me by bleeding that out a little bit, if that makes sense. But it is pretty harsh. And let's do some hatching, shall we? We're almost done. We're almost going to call it a night. All right, so some of these areas here I want to make a bit darker. I'm not able to bleed this bit out enough. The Jelly Roll On's a bit of a silvery tint, which I don't like, but I'll add a bit more dark in some of those areas once it's dry, and it should blend in okay. All right. I think it's time to remove the masking fluid. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll use my eraser pen. I'll use this for that, my little click pen, or if it's a small area, I like to use just this little eraser. But since I'm home, I've got my iPad resting on my little rubber piece, and this also will remove it. So let's start with this, and then for the last bits, I'll use this eraser. All right. So now in some of these areas, like with the tree, I want to add a little bit of texture on the trunk. I'll go in over this silver just to add some darks. And I'm adding the darkest darks. There's a bit more dark under some of these areas. And then here, so just a little bit of masking fluid there. And you can see how nicely, that works. Okay, so this part of the branch is darker around the building. I'm just adding those very, very final touches now where I see the dark values that are going to frame, because remember, this is the star of the show. And remember how I left this roof because I didn't want it to get too dark. I'm going to leave it, even though, in the photo it's a darker value. I think offset against this very dark background, it makes it pop out more. And these are those decisions that you make as an artist, because you're telling a story with your picture. And so you have, the ability to make those decisions and bring the viewer into where you want them to look. So to make this pop a little bit more, I'm just putting it up against the edge. Wherever there's a really dark area, there's usually a bit of a lighter value that is right next to it and is going to really help it have that dimension and pop out. All right, I think, now this area, remember we did the masking fluid, but I think I'm going to just emphasize it a little more like that, just to help it pop out a bit more. And that is the darkest dark. This should be maybe a little bit darker. So let's go in with a bit more hatching right around this area. First, we'll sink it into the earth more right here. And then this, I'm looking for everything that's as dark as this. So this area around here can get a bit darker as well. So I'm going to ramp up some of the hatching in these areas. And I didn't put in this shadow, but that is going to need to be there too, underneath this. At this stage of the game, I'm just, I'm just fiddling. I mean, it could be done. I could call it a day. Now there's some planks around this part of the tower. Do I want to put those in? I don't think I'm going to, because there's so much fiddly texture around it that I think it will actually detract from it. Oh, we need a little bit more, some of the shading in this part of the window. There, I think that's good. And I think I'm ready to call it a day on this. This is quite an intricate one, but it's going to be a fun one to add watercolor to. So if you're watching this now or later, let me know in the comments for the watercolor bit. Should I add watercolor to the same ones that I did on the live stream, or just any one that I want from the Inktober? I'm curious whether, I thought it might be nice for some of the people who did draw along to be able to see how color was added. So I'm gonna probably call this a day now. I might come in later and just fiddle and add just a few little fine details, but I'm really happy with that. I think that's it. So yeah, thanks for joining me today. Sorry it was such a long one. um, but thank you again, and we hope to see you again soon. All right, hope you have a beautiful rest of your Sunday. Bye.